Hi everyone, my name is James, and yesterday Valve announced something that's really interesting. They're calling the Steam Deck, and it is supposed to be their take on the Nintendo Switch console. And it's like a little portable thing where you can play any PC game in your Steam library. I'm sure that there are some restrictions. And of course, they say like you can do a fresh install of Windows on it if you wanted and things like that. But I'm very curious. I actually kind of want to have one just to see what it was like. But before that, Steam had tried to do something called the Steam Machine. I think a lot of people have actually forgotten about it, and that is not a good sign. So, I wanted to tell you about my experience as a Steam Machine owner. I no longer use it, as I was able to build my own PC last year, right before everything went bad. But the version of the Steam Machine I had was called the Alienware Alpha. And what the Steam Machine was Steam's idea to make their own console. And it was supposed to be like a PC gaming console hybrid sort of a thing. And at the time, it went up against the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. They took a while. There were some hiccups when they were trying to design their own thing. So Alienware said, well, we'll go ahead and, because they were working with Valve on this, they're like, well, we'll go ahead and do our own little thing, and we're going to call it the Alienware Alpha. It was released at the end of 2014, early in 2015 or so, and it came with its own, or came with Windows, but it had its own interface. It was based on Kobe, and it could launch Steam or other video games from other services, and it was weird. I got mine for my birthday when I was in college, and I just got the base model. And when I got it, it came with a handful of games that are still in my Steam library to this day. And it came with an Xbox 360 controller, which I still actively use. But the two major games I can remember that came with it were Metro Last Light and Payday 2. But this was the base model. When they did their first generation Alienware Alphas, and I think there were only ever two generations, there were only you only had one graphics card option across the board, and it was a modified GTX 860M from NVIDIA. So the graphics card at this point in this thing was slightly better than a 750 Ti. It had an Intel, well, I believe mine was an i3 4130. So it was like it acts like a laptop in all other cases, which is kind of weird. And it came with a 500 gig hard drive and 4 gigs of DDR3 laptop RAM. They marketed the thing as being upgradable, and I only ever upgraded the hard drive and the RAM, and I'll get back to the hard drive in a minute. But you couldn't upgrade, or you couldn't upgrade the processor, you just couldn't upgrade the graphics card, which was kind of an issue. When they did the second generation, they had this thing where you could plug in a graphics card and through the back, and it can perform with a slightly better graphics card, but then it would just look kind of weird. But anyway, on the front there were 2 USB ports, and on the back there were 2 USB ports, and there was one to at the bottom for like little wireless dongles. And apart from that, it had like there's the power cable, there's the power cable, Ethernet, or was right here, digital optical out, and then it had the HDMI port where you could plug it into your TV, and then one you could pass through it to another device. A bit weird that that was there, but what can you do? But I got it in 2015, and it basically ran every game that I had at the time that I threw at it. I was just really getting into PC gaming at the time, and I was just playing on a crappy old 2013 laptop. So, I actually played BioShock Infinite and Borderlands 2 and Skyrim on an old Windows 7 laptop. So, from 2013. So, but this I went from like playing at 30 seconds or 3 frames per second on low on Skyrim on a 720p monitor to running at 1080p 60 frames per second on ultra with this thing, and I was like, oh my goodness, the difference was night and day. But since you couldn't upgrade the graphics card, experiences were limited, and every so often, because I used it for 5 years, that was my main PC for 5 years, and every so often a new game would come out that I could run. I played WoW Classic on this thing when it came out, and the game was from 2004, so it was going to be fine. And I played a lot of Battle for Azeroth WoW on this. I was able to play Fortnite when it came out. It's not like Fortnite's the most difficult thing to run anyway, but I played it at about 60 frames per second on low, 1080p. But most of the games that would come out that I could run, and I could do the Halo Master Chief Collection, but because Halo Reach came out on PC like right towards the end of the time I had it, and I was able to run it just fine. But most unless the game was like an indie title, like I couldn't really run it very well. And that was in part because of the graphics card limitation. So there's only so much a 750 Ti could do. So I mentioned I could upgrade the hard drive, and I did that several times. The reason that this thing is small. It's about the size of a Wii U. But when I had mine, it would get really, really hot, especially if I'm playing something like Overwatch. Because when I played Overwatch on it, it would get to like 85 degrees, and I changed my hard drive out like 2-3 times the entire time I had it, and I think it was but for some reason it was always the hard drive that was the one that faulted. It wasn't the processor, it wasn't the RAM, it wasn't the graphics card, it was always the hard drive. And I think it was because of the high temperatures that came when I played it. So as someone that has had an experience with a Steam machine, I'm a bit kind of nervous about how this the Steam Deck is going to go. I am still morbidly curious, and I wouldn't mind owning one, but I don't know if it's going to, because you're not going to be able to upgrade the thing, except by putting in like an SD slot or something, or a micro SD card or something. But hopefully it turns out okay. But I just feel like it might just be more of just a gimmick item, not really much else, and I don't know if it's going to be as revolutionary as they're talking about. And I'm basing that off my own experiences as a person that had a Steam machine. They did do the official Steam machine thing, and I think it was practically the same Alienware Alpha, but with the Valve, or like the Steam logo printed on it, instead of Alienware's. And it shipped with a Steam controller. I can't find... Oh. Shipped with a Steam controller. I couldn't find mine for a second. and it ran on Steam OS, and of course it was Linux, and it could barely run anything, and it just somehow performed worse than this thing. So I'm a bit nervous about how it's going to go. Hopefully it turns out okay. I don't know if I'll buy one right out of the gate, but I kind of hope that it turns out fine. I'm just a bit apprehensive about the Steam Deck as someone that's owned a Steam machine in the past. So I do wish Valve the best of luck, and hopefully it turns out okay. But what do I know? I'm just some random dork on the internet.